Okay, a lot of stuff is happening. I'm working on a lot of new stuff. Um, I'm always learning, like that's part of the funnest thing about programming is always learning. Like the first game that I had published, Titan Axe, when I was done with it, I felt like, you know, it was really well made and it was great. The controls were kind of hard. Um, when I look back, I wish I would have made it a two-button game. I think that would have just solved all the problems with the controls being difficult. And when I make a sequel to it, it's definitely going to be a two-button game. But at that time, I didn't know how to layer graphics for the multicolored sprites, and the way I used variables in the game. I had this idea at the time that if I used the score, because there was a score reading kind of setup where you assign variables to each of the two numbers for the 6-digit score, like SC1, SC2, SC3, and then you could actually read the score and use it for things. That if I did that, then I could control the progression of the game using the score. Because there was no score, I wasn't going to have like a score in the game. It's just started up and it's either on easy or hard, and then you play through the game. And as I look back on it now, I would have just used normal variables and I would have used different methods to get similar and definitely better results. I know today I could make that game and it would look considerably better. It would look significantly better than it did, and it would play significantly better. I've been working on a new game that is for this year. I want to get it done this year. And I have done some adjustments to the wrestling game. I want to get that done too. I'm really happy with how the wrestling game is looking, and especially how it plays. The wrestling game is more like I don't want to say it's more like a fighting game because it's really not. It's like axially, it's left and right. It's horizontal. It's not a wrestling game where you're moving into the foreground, into the background, and in circles and stuff like that. And I had considered, just totally starting the game over again and allowing that to happen. But I really like the idea of a wrestling game where it's more like a fighting game, where you're facing each other, and there are move sets that each character can do, and then you grapple with each other, and then the move set that happens dictates what's going to be happening next in the match. For instance, you can't just run straight past the opponent. You would have to maybe body slam them so they're on the ground. Then you can move past them. You can't jump over them. I mean, I've never seen any wrestlers like just standing, jumping right over another wrestler. I've never seen a real fighter jump flipping over a fighter or back flipping, over some obstacle or something in an actual fight. That's part of the lack of realism in a lot of those two-dimensional fighting games. But this idea was actually more born from necessity because the kernel that I'm using to draw as much graphics as I can on the screen also makes it so I can't cross horizontal paths with certain graphics. So I can explain how that works. Briefly before I get on to what I'm actually working on as well. So we'll go into NWA, which is the code name for the game. The game is WVW, okay, which anyone who's watching already knows. And this will just be a little lesson in how the multi-sprite kernel works. I really feel like these videos are boring and also kind of irrelevant now, just because everyone is using different things. But I don't really think that the same amount of material can be made, at least from the standpoint of using original chips and original cartridges without any modern additions. I don't think the other programming environments are actually better. Okay, and of course that's just my opinion. But for instance, there's words at the bottom of the screen that are telling everything. It's explaining what to do to start the game and to play. There are several sprites on the screen right now, all doing different things. The camera is a sprite. The wrestler is made of 2 single-colored sprites layered to create a multicolored sprite. These characters are the same sprite, but they're doubled, or they're tripled, and then they're moved in between 2 different frames. And then the background is a single-colored playfield layered over a second single-colored playfield. Also, the ropes are a sprite that are on the second playfield. That way they can't cancel each other out. But with this, the multi-sprite kernel, you can't have 2 second player graphics on the same horizontal row. They'll either shimmer, flicker, or cancel each other out. So, and it's not something really that usable. Okay. So the way it works with this, that wrestler can't really go up to where the camera is. If he does, then it will cancel out either half of his graphics or the camera graphics. Or it will cancel out the rope graphics. He can't go down to where the crowd is and be on the same horizontal row, or he'll cancel out one of the graphics of the crowd. And so when I start the game, the referee is actually created using 2 layered single color sprites, and I can't have the characters move down and be on the same row as the referee. I also can't have them be on the same row as the signs. So the decorative signs that are happening in the crowd, if I do a suplex to one of the characters, I'll go ahead and try to get that to work real quick. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Now there's a sign. Okay. Now, right when the suplex move started, any sign that's on that top row is canceled out for that brief period of time. And, you know, it may not even be noticed by someone just playing the game. It adds that kind of variety that they're just, you know, putting down the sign, briefly. But as you play it, you might realize, wait a minute, every time I do a move where the character is up there, the sign disappears. And that's because it has to. If I move the character up there, then the sign could cancel out half of the graphics of one of the characters. And I definitely don't want to do that. So what I've got programmed within this game so far, now all the images are in this game for moves. And that is good, but it also is kind of bad a little bit. The reason it's bad is because every move that I want to do in the game has to use some form of whatever graphics I've put in here. And I've got a lot of moves, but it may have an effect of making the graphics look kind of stale. I mean, of course it's going to be better than the other game for the 2600, which basically only has body slams, punches, and kicks. I think you can do some clotheslines, but they're just punch graphics. A very similar method, but mine has much more graphics. It's a much larger game, and it's using different methods that weren't used then. So the reason I say that, I'll go ahead through the moves. Let's see, you could do a body slam, and you can do a suplex, that's where I've come so far. So you can throw each other in the ropes, you can run into each other, you can do a body slam, or you can do a suplex. Now I have moves for punching, drop kicking, for tons of other moves, just tons of other moves, but they'll all be reworkings of several images that I've put into the game to be used. Now, there are other systems for creating your own Atari games now that are more modern, arguably better. I don't know very much about them, you know. I know how people use assembly, but I don't have the time and the patience to try to use assembly to make the entire game. And I'm not interested in that. I actually really love how fun and fast and easy it is to use BASIC to create games. And when people say that you have to use assembly to make a good game, or BASIC games are too slow, things like that, I will say no, I don't agree with that. There are good games. There are games that you wouldn't even know were programmed in BASIC that were done with BASIC. And, you know, I don't want to coin the term too much, but yeah, I'd die on that hill. For instance, one of my favorite Burger Time games was programmed in BASIC. And if you weren't told that, you wouldn't know, because it's fast, colorful, multicolored sprites. It is in no way slow or clunky or bad because it was done using BASIC. And, you know, there's this negative stigma of, you know, BASIC is too slow or resource intensive, and in its rawest form, from its oldest presence, I'd have to say that's correct. But this isn't that. You know, what this is doing, this is Visual BASIC using Atari BASIC within it, and to create kernels, using a kernel, which is assembly code module that affects how everything is programmed using Atari BASIC. You have two main, actually there are several main kernels now you can use with the introduction of I think it's the ELF kernel. We also have the DPC Plus kernel, the standard kernel, and the multi-sprite kernel. I use standard and multi-sprite, but I've also made an entire game using DPC Plus. And I'm interested in using ELF, but it does kind of go outside of my normal mode of operation. You know, my idea is that I want to be able to make a real Atari cartridge using an Atari PCB and a chip, and it runs on a real hardware. And the ELF kernel supports it's either the Pixie kernel supports the ELF cart, or the ELF kernel supports the Pixie cart. I'm pretty sure it's that way. It has a processor that is on the cartridge itself that's actually halting the system and then emulating a faster 2600. And that's cute, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. You know, I hope people make good games for it, but I have the chips and the cartridges to make 32K bank switching games. So my mistake with some of these earlier games was I thought that the super chip was going to be like widely available, and it's actually not. Okay, so I need to do different colors for the wrestling game. I need to go ahead and just program the moves. Once all the moves are programmed, then I need to put some damage indication in there somewhere to where you can actually win a match. Then I need to program the referee counting for the match. You can also go outside the ring, and that was something I really wanted to keep in this game. But to have more graphics, I will have to manipulate things. Now, my ideas for more graphics were to shorten the wrestlers. I noticed that they look kind of long-legged, and that I could probably take 2 or 3 pixels off of the height of each of their legs. And with all of the moves, that would free up graphics ROM space. Also, I could get rid of some of the outside of the ring graphics. I don't want to do that, though. I really like how the outside of the ring looks right now. I could get rid of the outside of the ring altogether and have the outside of the ring actions happen on that main screen. My problem with that is that part of this game I wanted to have the presentation like wrestling, where the wrestler comes into the area, the people are cheering, and have the crowd's cheers ramp up. Maybe even have like a song that goes with that wrestler. Have them walk to the ring, and then go up to the side of the ring. Then have the focus go to the inside of the ring, where they're ready to fight with each other. Then when you're fighting, you can throw them outside the ring and fight out there and count them out. So, and those are all, I consider them to be important aspects of wrestling. And, with the area of, generationally, the games that this would be comparable to, it is not represented with the same depth that this would be representing it. So this would have, the ability to have a lot of room to fight with the crowd there, possibly have a chair or something else, and then maybe even knock them out or defeat them outside the ring to where you can force them to be counted out. Just more variety. Now in pro wrestling, you can knock them outside the ring, but it's the main screen and it's just off to the side a little bit. This would be a completely separate screen that's outside the ring, where you can see the camera, you can see the ropes, the side of the ring, the crowd can react, and I think that's more immersive. That's the way I want to go with it. Now with the multi-sprite kernel, it's using ROM space for the graphics, the playfield graphics, I mean. So with the standard kernel, the only parts of it that really use it are definitions, like if you're controlling the width of the playfield rows with PF heights, that each instance of that will use ROM space, but that's because it's code. Of course it's going to, but it also affects your eighth bank, whereas your the data for the playfield image itself doesn't, and that will just take up a small amount of space in the particular bank that it's written in, and that leaves more room for graphics. Of course, the problem therein is that you only have 2-player graphics in the standard kernel. So the way they gave you the extra graphics is by mirroring the screen. By mirroring it, you also can have automatically no blank lines, which makes the screen look way, way, way better. But also you can control the resolution and have 1 pixel width images if you want to, which is really, really excellent, as long as you're ready to mirror the image. But and because of that, you get 5 extra graphics. So you get player 0, which is player 1. You get player 1, which is player 2, but you also have 2, 3, 4, and 5 that can all be used. Those are all being used in this game, and I really love doing that. It's just like not normal for an Atari game usually to have that much graphics or that good of graphics. What I'm working on now, off on the side here, and I've shown graphics for this before in my other videos of before I started working on this. And what it was an adventure game idea where the backgrounds could be cycled through to look at just the different ideas of backgrounds. Let's look at that first in Stella. I'll go ahead and see if I can find that real quick. Okay, and it'll be my older stuff here. Maybe this is it. There we go. This was an idea for a castle using multi-sprite, higher resolution mirrored playfield. And if I press the button, it will cycle through different ones. This is another graphic, a tiled walkway with trees on each side. I guess fruit trees, fruit bushes, or larger trees. That would be like a dungeon setting. This is a town. I've changed a lot of these graphics for what I'm working on though. Of course, I make dozens of copies of all of my work and just spread it out on all kinds of systems so that if anything goes catastrophically wrong, I'll have something to pick up and work from. Now, of course, the colors can be changed on these, and I plan on doing that. Okay, so as I'm cycling through these, there's back to the castle. This was the original, and I'm calling it Melba, the original prototype, startup dream phase of an adventure game like The Legend of Zelda. Okay? And I'm sure people will say that I can't make The Legend of Zelda for the Atari, and I can't because Nintendo owns that IP, but in this particular game, it's called The Legend of Melba. The only thing in the game that resembles Zelda at all is the main character. And the main character does resemble Link to a degree. But every other character and all the other graphics are completely unique and custom. And I drew Link too. I mean, it wasn't copied from Link. I drew it, completely. But this is the game. This is The Legend of Melba, and I'm going to show the progress I've made with it. I'm using Multisprite. I'm using the text mini kernel for story talking and stuff. I've got a lot of graphics, cool looking bad guys and stuff, but this is just going to be a walk through the first world map, and certain things need tweaked here and there, and there are going to be color changes. So this is actually before color changes are made to make the regions and the different segments stand out. So a lot of it might seem repetitious, but once the colors are changed, they'll stand out. Okay, so let's go ahead and play this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Sorry if this music is making your dogs run circles around your house or yell at you or makes your cat jump on your back and bed its claws into your neck. This was taken from the Space Simulator trading game that I was working on, and so there will be different songs for this game. I might keep this one as the title song, but there'll definitely be different songs. Okay, so let's start it up. I'm noticing actually some jittering there. I need to change something for that speaking part, because the jittering's happening because I just finished all of the pathways for the first top level, and I need to actually make it so that for that particular part of the game where they're speaking to you, it doesn't search through that. Okay, here's the first castle, and the exclusions have been programmed. So and he has like a little push jitter here, so he can go ooh, like he's pushing something. Now, at worst case scenario, I have to redraw this character, okay? Because none of the other characters in this game look like anything from The Legend of Zelda, just this guy. And he kind of resembles Link a little bit. Playing with the keyboard now. Now, the screen doesn't scroll. No, it doesn't scroll, you know, scroll over on each side. Now, if you notice, the score says 111000. The idea I had for this game is that the score counter will be used to show your items and your hearts. And so 0 will actually be blank, and then 1 will be the hearts. So there'll be that red color. So what this would actually show at the bottom here is 3 hearts and then nothing after that. And then you can cycle through your items, and they'll each show up as their own color, and then you can have 6 of any item. And one thing I've done to this game, this is not going to be a Legend of Zelda clone as far as gameplay goes. He's actually going through different screens right there. They'll all be different colors. And I'll be working on that today, making it so each of those screens has different colors. This game will have item mixing, so you'll be able to get powder and mix it to make bombs. You'll be able to trade things, different things to different characters. Here's a place where you can't go down. That's because the screen beneath them is actually blocked. There too. Now, one thing unique about this, and if you're watching my videos, you'll have the advantage of knowing this if you ever play this game. This world actually wraps around. So the very farthest leftmost piece of the map actually connects to the farthest most right part, but not in every place. Some of them are actually blocked off. But you can, in effect, go, if you're on the very far left of the screen, all the way to the very far right, of the map. You'll end up somewhere to the far right of the map. And it's a maze. This is a huge maze. This first maze is 90 screens. And also there are dungeons, and I'm considering making a second map of another 90 screens if I can. I'd like to, but I have to start working in bad guys and stuff. You saw the elf that was talking at the beginning, and that's going to be important, having characters to talk to. One way to make the game diverse is several of the friend characters will actually be able to be enemies too. So there'll be different colors to have a different appearance, but maybe there'll be a good fairy that you can talk to, and then there'll be an evil fairy that will attack you. There'll be a good knight, and then there'll be a bad guy knight that'll have different colored armor. There'll be good guards, there'll also be bad guards that will attack you. So, and there's going to be a storyline. The story, if you read the beginning of it, is that, at least at the very beginning, the queen had imprisoned you wrongfully, thinking you were a thief. And then because her daughter, Melba, is in love with you, she says she's your friend and that you're a good person, and so she's going to set you free, but she has to send you on a quest to do that. So she's going to send you on a quest to find her cook who is missing. Okay? And then that leads to a huge expanding storyline where there's going to be adventures. Notice how I did that right there. From here, if I just go down, it puts me on the right side. If I go left, now I'm on the left side. And then that can actually get me different places. There will be prizes in the game that you can only get by going as far to the right on the map as you can, and then going over to a place that's on the very far left. So I've done that too. Now with these trees, I'm going to different screens. On this, perhaps this screen, the trees will be a different color. Maybe the ground will be a different color. And then on this one, the trees might be this color. And then you'll know, oh, I just changed screens. It won't be as confusing. I'm going to do that for many, many places on the map. Any place where I want you to be confused, extra confused, I'll leave the colors the same. And then any place where I want you to know what's going on more easily, I'll change the colors so there will be less confusion. Now this is blocked off, as you can see. And yes, it's meant to be funny, a parody. This is meant to be a parody of The Legend of Zelda to a degree. Melba is, and of course I had to do homework to figure all this out too, because I didn't just want this to be, haha, Melba toast. But apparently there was a woman who called herself Melba, and she made this dessert that everybody loved, and it was like made with raspberries and chopped up fruit and stuff, and then you put it on toast, on this little like hard piece of toast, and it, like, I don't know, gets absorbed. And so they named the toast after her. Okay? And that's going to be the funny side story in this quest. But believe it or not, this story is actually a tragedy. It involves all kinds of crazy stuff. And this is not just going to be a funny story about getting toast. It's actually going to be a pretty deep, involving, dramatic, tragic love story. So I've moved around a whole bunch. You get an idea. See, he's got the little shove mode. Now, that's for you can shove things. Now, what is it going to have that's like Zelda? Well, I'm hoping to be able to have a boomerang, if I can. Possibly a variety of swords. I'm definitely going to have a variety of swords. The boomerang might be too hard. I'm going to give it my best. I'm also going to have bombs that can reveal hidden areas. That's one of the best parts of Zelda, is that you can blow up a wall or a bush or something, and then it will reveal an area. And that's going to be something in my game. There are also dungeons, and I don't have any except for one image that's like the dungeon. That's the image at the very beginning of the game where you are being talked to by the elf. And that's one screen that will also be used in dungeons. So this is what I'm working on too, on the side. And I guess this is the 40th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda. And that was a great game. I'm one of those weirdos that thinks that the Super Nintendo is a violet Lego brick makeup box with a hoof switch made for girls, and that the original Nintendo is actually a better system. And I think the Nintendo is an awesome game system, the Nintendo Entertainment System. I also think that the Nintendo 64 is an awesome game system. But the Super Nintendo is good, but it annoys me too because it has squished graphics. It has cropping on a lot of my favorite games. Where, I don't know how they let that by their filters, their sensors, or whatever. Because when you look at a graphic for a video game, and you've seen maybe a PC ad or played it on a computer or you've played it on an Amiga or on an Atari or you've played it on a Sega Genesis and then the one for Super Nintendo looks smushed. That's weird to me. I don't like that. Now one thing I need to tweak is right here. When you go from a single row screen like this, and then if I go to the right, he actually needs to be a little further over here. Because when I come over here and go to the left, see, he didn't pop through. So the activator needs to be further to the right, so that, and then when you go to see, because he didn't go to the left. So the thing that activates the divide needs to be a little further over the right. But if he does go to the left here, see, that puts him in the middle. That's better. So I need to make it so if you're standing right in the middle, it's going to probably go to the right. But when you go to the right, you'll actually be over here slightly. Just to make it divide better. And, I used crude approximations when I wrote this code and then tweaked them to make it the way it was supposed to be. And that's easy, very easy adjustments to get that where it needs to be. So this is the prototype form before the enemies and items and all that stuff are put in here of another work I'm doing, hoping to finish this year, The Legend of Melba. Now when I came up with the graphics for this game, another thing I've learned is to conserve space and just to get more use out of a sprite. I draw the sprites in a certain way where they can either be standing or they can be moving. So this will be our clerk, and he'll be someone that you can trade with or buy things from, sell things to. He might be able to mix things for you that you can't mix. If we look at the character, he has his right foot up a little bit and he has his left hand up a little bit. So if I go ahead and just mirror the image, which is something that you can do with hardware with the Atari, we can see that he's got a walking animation now. See? So he can be walking around like that. No problem. So let's look at some of the other characters. Here's the cook. Okay, and we can see him doing the same thing. Okay, I'm actually just hitting the button to mirror them. That's the keyboard noise there. I've got a character in it named Dude, and as you can see, he's the dude. He's the dude. The dude abides, right? I thought about putting some comedic lines in this that are from The Big Lebowski, just so if anyone's playing it, it will hint at it. But as you can see, this is a way to make one image that will be usable for walking or for anything. A lot of bad guys in video games, they just run into you and they cause their damage, right? Well, in this case, the character, the bad guy could do that. This is an elder. Now, of course, using colors to change the characters is a big deal, right? So this is the elder, and he might come in different colors. All of these characters might have different colors. Here he is walking. Okay. Funnest part of these games is bringing these characters to life. Here's the elf you saw earlier. Okay. So this is a method you can use if you want to make simple graphics and be able to use them and move them around. Okay. Now here's the queen. Now I actually changed her graphic, and I'll show you one easy, just a quick, simple way to fix this picture so it can follow that rule. And there we go. Now this image is ready for that. So now she has a little walk. Just that easy. How about that? Now Melba herself has a sister named Emeralda. Now they, because they have a side view, have a second frame of animation that allows their feet to look like they're moving. So they take up a little more space. But I might change it so that they can actually do the same thing. But I'd have to change the graphics. This is just a recolor. And actually Melba is shorter now. So I don't think, let's see, there's the step animation, by the way. I don't know if I made her shorter for these images, but I shrunk her down so she wouldn't be so gigantic in the game. Because the Melba graphic was actually from a different game I was working on that was more of a side-scrolling action jumping game with lots of characters. We've got a lady, and the lady stepping has this the same thing. She's got one foot up and one arm up. Now this won't be a standing frame, so she'll actually have another frame that's for standing. But here's her running, and you can see where there's a lot of action being portrayed just by mirroring the image. So this is a way, if you want, you can get a lot out of your image just by mirroring. Okay. Now the items that I'm making for this game, there are a lot of them. And of course I probably won't be able to use all the graphics that I want to use in the game. Who knows, this game might bomb out and I won't even be able to finish it. I want to finish this game though. I want this to be a big deal. So let's look at this first one that's alphabetically on the list first here, the Arbalest, which is a primitive crossbow. There we go. There's a bag you can find, and now this will have different colors, chances of it being a trap or an explosive or a very valuable item. It's a treasure that's left by bad guys or treasure that you might find somewhere laying around. Okay, we got berries, which are a key part of the game because, you know, you want to be able to make Melba toast. This is a bag of Arbalest bolts. Here we have bombs, your standard bomb. Now, in Yeet Fighter, to fire the fireball or to do any move where an extra sprite is thrown out there, because it's a standard kernel game, I actually use a method that looks at the bit as it alternates. So it's actually happening as fast as it possibly can in code. And it alternates between the two graphics. And that's what causes the shimmer. That's what adds the extra sprite. It has to be a single color sprite though. So chances are, at least I'm pretty sure it has to be, we'll see, but chances are this bomb will end up being a single color bomb. But I don't know yet. There might be a way to make it still have the colors like this one has. And also the bomb will be something in your item list, so you can use that. Now again, like I said, there's mixing, and I've come up with all kinds of ideas for how to mix things to create other items. So this, unlike Zelda, this game will involve resource management and item mixing. Also, there's another catch that's going to be in the game where there are 4 different colors of flowers. But if you carry, okay, 2 flowers can be carried at the same time. Okay, like I think it's a red flower and a yellow flower can be carried at the same time. But if you carry a orange flower or a blue flower, then they will destroy all of your red and yellow flowers. Now the blue flowers can cure poison. The orange flowers are valuable, but you can trade the flowers to fairies or elves for certain items. So it's like a form of currency for them, where they're not interested in like as much so kingdoms, gems, and money and stuff. They'll sell things and trade things, but for the most part, they want to trade for the things that they want. So that's going to be a catch in the game. There will be places where if you run into a yellow flower, then it will immediately eliminate any blue flowers you have, and then you might be going into a place where there are enemies or traps that poison you, and you'll want to be able to use the blue flower to cure poison. So it's almost like the yellow flowers that you were using before as a source of currency to trade with the elves or the fairies now are a minefield, where if you accidentally step on one or pick one up, then it will make you have to regress and go back and fix that. So that was an idea that I came up with, so that you could have 6 of either group of flowers that will be compatible. So if you have, suppose you have 5 yellow flowers and 6 red flowers, and then you pick up 1 blue flower, now you only have 1 blue flower. Okay? And then, so what you would want to do is go and trade. So they will trade you or create blue flowers for you. Also, there are potions that are in jars. You get jars, and then you can mix things to make potions. So mixing and creating items is going to be a big element in this game. And I've written all this out, of course. I've got the maps and all that stuff. Let's see here. I'll go ahead and show if this can even be seen, which, you know, half the time my videos are so dark I wouldn't even want to watch them, honestly, but I don't know if this will help. But here is here's the World 1 map. Okay, and I'll go ahead and hold it close and just show how oh, it's not focused. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do autofocus briefly just to get it to look at this image, if it will. There's a check mark in the middle of one of these squares. Okay, and that means that I've completed the exclusions and the connections between levels. Okay, so that's one map. The second map that is tentative is here. I'm using a flashlight to illuminate this. Okay, then I have several different dungeons. Now there's a variable dedicated to story progression, and that will work with the dungeons so that I can reuse the same dungeon maps. But they'll be different based on the story progression. So if your story progression, say, is 4, then you'll get a certain dungeon, but you won't be able to go into certain areas of it. And what that does is it lets me use and I have 4 different four different dungeons, and I have one simple palace diagram kind of set up that can be used over and over and over again with different colors and different arrangements. Okay, I've also got mixing and this game's going to have jokes, humor, it's meant to have a parody kind of humor slant to it. Now, is this a game that can be published? Well, I think regardless of how far I get it from looking like Zelda, I don't know if this is a game where, anyone would want to actually publish it. I would hope so. Okay, this is the poof that happens when you or an enemy dies, but it's also the explosion that happens when you set off a bomb. So that happens, and then because the Atari can do hardware doubling and quadrupling, then it will actually, the second phase of the explosion will look like that. And then the third phase of the explosion will look like that. So we'll get boom, like that, really quick. And then that will be the animation, just hard. That doesn't cost me anything because it's done in hardware. Okay, got different phases of the boomerang. And I don't know, the boomerang might be too hard. It also might have to be a single color instead of 2 colors. We'll see. Now I know some methods, though, of actually getting a second shade as a border without using an additional sprite. Okay, and all it is it's X or Y coordinate shifting. So if you have a single colored sprite on the screen and then have a second screen like I always do, on the second screen you move it 1 X coordinate space to the left or right, that will create a lighter or darker colored border over that side. And it can be used to create a border for your sprite. You're not going to have too much control over it, of course, because you're using the same color, but it is effectively a border. So there you go. That's an easy way to do it. So with this, in the case here, I could do a shifting for each frame that it moves, and it will create a border just like this dark color, only instead it would be like a darker shade of yellow. Okay. I could also do that with the bomb. We'll see. A cactus, and the cactus will be something that you don't want to run into because it hurts you, but you can also collect and use to make things, maybe potions or something like that. There's a treasure chest that will come in different colors. Some of them you can just open, some have to be unlocked, some have a chance of being a trap, and some have important items. There's also different colored gates and different colored keys. There will be black gates, silver gates, golden gates, and blue gates that are magical. And all of them you have to use a corresponding key to open those gates. So if you find a black gate, then you need to get a black key, silver gate, silver key, golden gate, golden key, magical gate, blue magical key. Okay. Here's a coin. And this is all tentative. There's a door. Now a door is single colored. That's probably what a door is going to look like. So maybe that's a little less tentative. But once I get this artwork out there, what I can do with it is what I can do with it. Now flowers, any item that's not something that the main character is using as a weapon can have a multicolored appearance because it can have a second frame. It may be too hard to add an additional frame timing event. It may make the character flash too much or shimmer too much to where I don't want that. That's why the fireballs in Yeet Fighter were single colored. That's why the flames that they threw at each other were single colored, because were I to add a second additional frame for each of those, the character wouldn't have just kind of lightly shimmered. They would have been flashing, like flickering, and it's a pretty big difference. And I'd much rather just have the single color and have just a light shimmer than have multicolored, but then have a whole bunch of flashing happening on the screen. But with the case of items like this flower, of course, that's nothing. That's easy to do. And in that sense, the bomb can actually just be the darker colored frame of the bomb, and then when you collect a bomb as a prize or create it, it can have the multicolored appearance. Now, one thing that I'm going to have to do with this game is once the game is finished completely and I've thoroughly tested it and it's absolutely ready to go, then there's one final thing that has to be done. That's the sword, and it can have different colors to be different swords. There's sword crafting, and also swords that you can find. So there's like a magic sword, you have to have it made. There's a upgrade that can be done to a weaker sword, and then there are a couple of swords that can be found. And the normal sword that you start with isn't that one. It's actually this one right here, kind of a little one. And of course, when you get a different one, it will look like this. And that's free because that's just hardware doubling. So I'll show you what the heart counter will look like after everything's done, because I have that ready to show off here, and it's waiting in Stella. There we go. Well, that's one way of it right there. There's some hearts down at the bottom, as you can see. Now I might change them. I do have some simpler ones on a different demonstration. But that could be your heart counters. Now there's not going to be half hearts like in The Legend of Zelda. It's just a heart counter, and when you get hit, you lose one heart. And when you eat something that gives you back health, you gain back a heart, or you gain back all of them. And then you will go up levels, so you can have 4 hearts, 5 hearts, or 6 hearts. 6 hearts will be the maximum, I think. I'd like that because that's easier for me to deal with. So yeah, now you notice he has a shield. It's not the same as Link's shield, and if you noticed, he's not really like Link the way Link looks. Link is squat and short, and his little feet stick out from under him. He's kind of like a wad. He's like pod-like, right? He's really short and squat. This looks more like, I don't know, a man, a short man, or a boy, or maybe an elf style character. His shield does not have the same emblem. His shield is not as large. He was drawn by me completely, and I wanted him to look more, I don't know, not super deformed. I didn't want him to look squat. Now this was before I added all the different rooms. And so I've shown in other videos, and anyone can look this up, but to change a game using Stella, you just hit your tilde key, and it takes you here. and whatever graphics have been loaded are on this right side. Okay, so if I go down here to my score that's been loaded already, which doesn't appear to be showing right now, it will show the numbers that can then be edited. Oh, there it is. Actually, I did. It was right here. So suppose I don't like this heart. I'm gonna take away this little edge on the side so it just looks like a heart. Okay. I can go directly in here, enter, saves it, enter opens the next line, backspace, and then you're dealing in ones and zeros because this is just binary, off and on. It's switches that are off or on. 8 switches that are off or on have 256 possible combinations. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to turn off the tilde key and you will immediately see a more simple heart. There we go. I'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit here. And let's go ahead and turn off auto focus. There we go. So this is a project I'm working on now. Let's look at some other things I'm also working on. Okay, here's a project that I was playing around with a month ago. And it could probably be done. Okay, this is a Burger Time clone. Okay, now this isn't, you know, exactly perfect. There's things here that won't work perfectly, but this is kind of a way that the multi-sprite kernel might be able to be used to make a Burger Time clone. Now we've got the bottom bun is actually just 2 missile sprites that are extended. Also between the burger and the top bun is a condiment, and there's ketchup on the right side. There is something here, it's like dark colored, maybe I thought it looked like bacon, okay, because it's like dark brown and kind of light gray. And then there's mayonnaise. Then we've got the top buns, the burger patties, and then the bottom buns. Over here we have our little chef guy, and then we have the egg, sausage, and pickle, and the ladders. Okay, now this is, I was going through ways that maybe this could be done. Now I could do the sprite doubling or tripling effects to have more than one on each row, but to try to get the same unique behavior of the characters that are in Burger Time would be very difficult with this method, because once, say, Mr. Egg there starts going up that ladder, if there's a second sprite being generated by hardware, it will also go up. So for moving left to right, that's perfect. And so this might be a game where the characters are more like platform guards than magnetic chasers. They're not going to, like, follow you and bite at your heels while you're running, but what they'll do is they'll like guard one ladder, and then you have to move, and so then maybe they will change their location. I considered making it, for instance, suppose the egg moves to the left to guard the ladder on the left, and so you go to the right, and so the egg moves all the way to the left, but then comes out on the right side of the screen, like over here, to block that ladder. And then I could have 2 or 3 of the Mr. Egg that would do that. So the play mechanics would have to be different were I to use this method. But it does give me all 3 different types of bad guys, a burger that can be made using the different sprites. Now, the way that the sprites are being controlled here, it would be difficult to have different layers and all kinds of different locations, but some location changes could be made. So this would be a much different version of Burger Time than what's ever been done. It would only kind of somewhat resemble Burger Time, whereas you could run over the tops of the parts and have them fall. You could have them hit the enemies as they fall. But as far as having, you know, many different levels and having the burgers all in different levels everywhere and in different locations, that's something that might not be able to be done. Now, I might be able to have one of them in different locations, then have the others be further apart, but on the same horizontal row. So little adaptations could be made, but nothing as diverse as the real Burger Time, where you could have any bun component anywhere, have the enemies, 2 or 3 or 4 of them all chasing you up a ladder at the same time. So, you know, just kind of a prototype idea, what if. And this is part of how to come up with your games, what could be done with the hardware that you're dealing with. And so this isn't breaking any rules, what you're looking at here. This isn't like a false, impossible image. All 3 of those sprites could be told to move and they would move. The sprites for the parts of the burger could fall and interact with the other components. The character himself could move and not conflict with any of the other components. One thing that can't happen, though, because of what's being done here, is none of the enemy sprites could share the same horizontal row. So again, that brings me back to that having more than one climb the ladder or chase you, or having several of them in a row chase you. So one thing that could be done, though, is, and this would be very creative and also probably very difficult, is if I used 2 of a enemy sprite hardware, you know, created 2 close enemy sprites, then when one starts to climb the ladder, it becomes one tall sprite that is the image of 2 of the enemies. That is possible. But how they're controlled and how much movement they can do becomes more difficult. And you know, it would be kind of choppier work. For instance, if the egg has a second close egg and then he begins to climb, immediately there would be a second egg underneath him. You wouldn't have like the animation of it crawling up underneath him. Then as he's climbing up, when he reaches the next plateau and then goes to the right or left, immediately a second egg would be to his right or left following him. So it wouldn't be that smoother transition where they're moving up and then going off to the side one way or the other. Visualizing and conceptualizing this kind of stuff is part of how this works. Now, another thing that I've considered doing, and this is something that I really think is a good idea, is anything that I make that is more complex than what can easily be done on the 2600, or even with harder methods what could be done on the 2600, I can then go and make it on the 7800. And this is something where I should be able to do something like this on the 7800 without any problem at all. As long as I keep it looking essentially like this and I don't make it any more complex. And then with the 7800, I could put the components of the burgers in different locations. I could have more than one enemy climbing the ladders and chasing you, but then this same artwork could very easily be translated, because all of it is basically 2 or 3 color sprites. Everything is small and simple. Nothing's too complicated. And I like it. I think it looks good. Now, I don't want to compete with Beef Drop or whatever. That's an excellent video game. But I do want to make my own versions of a lot of these games. So if anyone's watched my earlier videos, I have a whole lot of functional prototype demo games that could very easily be turned into complete games. Just basically by taking what's already been there, and then just making it into the next level. So let's look at a couple of those. This is the Ghostbusters game. Now, this screen looks really great, but to make this game, I'll probably have to reduce the resolution by 1 notch. This uses the multi-sprite kernel, and it uses layering to get extra colors. When I made this game, I just, like I usually do, I way overdid it. I came up with, a dozen different backgrounds. I came up with probably almost a dozen different ghosts and bad guys and stories. But now the text kernel has to go in there. The screens have to be more carefully created to use less ROM space. But this game is a real possibility, and it can look the way that it looks right here, right now, because I've learned so much more as I'm going along. As I make such, I try to make a new game, and then a new problem presents itself, and then I try to figure out how to deal with that problem, and then that makes it so that problems that I had with earlier works can then be dealt with. The order that I make these things has a lot to do with this, learning process where I'm just, learning new things over and over again. This was something I really want to do. Okay, and here's Cute Kong. And I need to tweak the colors a little bit. And a lot of these games, they'll just look better in emulation. Some of them will look better, even though I make them with hardware, CRT, all the real stuff in mind. Some of them will just look inherently better using Stella or some fast emulator. This is a playable demo where you can actually climb. I'd kind of like to make the climbing slightly faster. The things missing from Donkey Kong I wanted to add. And of course I lost some things in the process to do this. There aren't angles to the platforms. So the angles where the gorilla jumps and it makes everything slanted, I didn't do that. Okay, because I want this to work with the mirror sprite, so I kind of can't do that. Not careful, I'm going to get burned here. There we go. Oh, I was almost there. But he has kind of like, his jump is almost like a little flea. It's like he jumps just enough to make it over the barrels. The jumping is harder. But I wanted the fire that happens and that chases you. I wanted the barrels to look a little bit more like the barrels from Donkey Kong and less like, like we always said that the barrels in the Atari Donkey Kong looked like honeycomb cereal. So I wanted it to look a little more like it, but I also wanted it to have my own touch-ups where this isn't Donkey Kong, it's like King Kong. It's like a giant gorilla. I wanted the girl to look more like what she looks like on the cover. She's blonde, she has a pretty dress on, and she's very beautiful. And I wanted her to be animated, in a little bit more dynamic way. See, she's moving back and forth, she's yelling for help, and she has her own little process there going on. Now, if you notice, if I'm not mistaken, the Atari Donkey Kong game never has more than 4 barrels on the screen at any given time. This one, I think, might be where it only has 3 at any given time, because the flame is taking up its own. But if you notice, once a barrel reaches the end, another one pops out immediately. And what staggers the barrels is a random decision of where it will fall. And so that actually changes the pattern of the barrels. But what I would need to do to make it more random is when it reaches the end, give it some time before have a random amount of time before it will regenerate. And then that would be completing the random event of the barrels falling, to where you cannot predict the barrel, and makes it that much more difficult. Okay. Now you'll notice that the flame changes color based on how many of the other repetitious kind of sprites are on the same horizontal row. This is because it's using 2 layers of single colors to make the burning effect and the face effect, whereas the barrels are using 1 color. They're single colored sprites. So when they line up with it, they can coexist but still flicker with the one with 1 color from the flame disappearing. But then the flame immediately comes right back, and that's just an effect of how this is being done. Now, I drew all this. I didn't lift any art from Nintendo. It's all drawn by me. I wanted to call it Cute Kong and just kind of throw it out there. Now, that brings me back to what I was originally talking about. Would Atari ever publish any of my stuff? Probably not. The more IP sensitive, clones of popular games, I don't think I could as easily just go to them and say, can you publish this? But I can manufacture them. I can just make this game, put it on a cartridge, and then sell it. And because my no super chip policy is in full swing, I can manufacture them. All I need is chips. I've got a flasher. I've got a ultraviolet chip eraser for the windowed EEPROMs. I have PCBs, and I can purchase PCBs. It is a very simple process to create these games. You're just soldering a flashed EEPROM and put a little sticker over the window. The cartridges are the most expensive part, actually, because buying the PCBs in bulk reduces their cost. Buying the chips in bulk reduces their cost. So I might get a 3D printer and print my own cartridges. That might have a way to be cost effective. I might repurpose cartridges for unwanted games or less popular games. The scoring system in this game actually is based on how many barrels reach the bottom. It's not how many you jump over. It's actually how many of them reach the bottom. Because, and notice how it's not updating now, because you're already at the top. Once you're at the top, the screen is ready to go to the next level of the game. But creating the next level of the game really is just copying and pasting this whole mechanism and then changing the graphics and changing the enemy functions. And that's all. So, but when you're down in the game moving around, when you jump over a barrel, it doesn't automatically give you points. Once the barrel reaches the bottom and then cashes out on the left side, then your score goes up. And the way that, that's the same. It just takes a couple seconds for your score to update, because If you make it past the barrel, then you either jumped over it or avoided it somehow. And it's basically combining the idea of the timer score enhancing part of Donkey Kong and the leaping over the barrel part in the same score update. So I'm not having math that's paying attention to how much time goes by to add a multiplier to your score, and I'm not focusing on every single barrel that you jump over. Rather, every barrel that makes it to the end raises your score, and that's taking care of both of those things at once. Now, the way the flame works in this is he's meant to be a barrier and a time limit. He's sneaking up to get to you, and after he reaches that point, you cannot grab the hammer, and you also can't descend after that point. So you're stuck on that middle row, and you have to make it up to the top. And that's the stressor there. I think this would be a great video game once it's done. And I wanted to make a series of games with cute characters and call them KW or KYEWT. Cute. KYEWT. This would be Cute Kong. I also wanted to do a volleyball game called Cute Beach, where you can play volleyball with pretty girls and stuff like that. And have other games like maybe call Burger Time Cute Burger. Right? There we go. So just have a series of them like that. Here's my version of a Star Trek game. And this one I really, really like a lot. I think it has the potential to be a magnificent game. Now the enemy ship is zoomed in very, very close. And so it looks kind of blocky and chunky. You got red alert going on, but this has a functional radar. As the ship's moving to the left, you notice a spot on the comm is moving. And that's actually meant to be adjusted for zoom, but it hasn't been adjusted yet. Were he to be the smallest size, then it would be properly adjusting. And then as he moves up and down, you can see that there's a high and low there on the right side. You could actually flip over. And there you go. I just did a flip. Okay. Now if I hit the button, it shows the ship graphic. And this needs to be adjusted a little bit, but this is my Atari version of the Enterprise. Now, certain games that I want to make, I'm not going to be crazy and try to think I could actually, publish this game and get away with it. This is something where it has to fall under that labor of love category and probably be a giveaway, right? Like or something like that. This game would probably be finished and then uploaded to one of those ROM sites where you could download it and just put it on your multi-cart, and there would be no, asking for money or trying to sell it or anything. I don't have a Patreon. I'm not going to, do a little dance around the subject and try to get money for what I'm doing. But I think that's the best Atari Starship Enterprise. Now, what am I going to change? I'm going to take some of the red and blue colors off of the neck pylon turbo lift kind of area there, because I think there's just a little too much red and blue. It was originally to mask the lack of an arch shape happening there. It's meant to give kind of the facsimile of an arch shape. And also I figured, hey, it's maybe some reflection from the red light at the back of the saucer section. But I think it's a little too cluttered around that area, so I just need to take away some of the color in that area. And then after that, the ship will be ready to go. What I'd considered doing for this game is having almost like cinematic events in between actions. So if you're on this screen and you fire a torpedo at the enemy ship, it doesn't just show like a torpedo, like right here going towards the ship. You see, he says fire torpedo, then it goes to this screen, then you see a torpedo come out right here and go like that, and then show an image of the ship, and then have the torpedo either hit it or miss it. Kind of like turn-based almost, and it would add that cinematic effect to the game. I think that would be really, really neat, and that's what I was going for with this one. Okay. Okay, here's my zombie apocalypse game based on Resident Evil. And you've got your character moving around. She enters this place. There's a zombie there. Okay. Haven't got really far with this one, but I do have a lot of room left. I did manage to put the exclusions there, the barrier. There's some problems with the way the colors blend that need to be worked out. And I have learned stuff since making this demo that will fix that. What I've learned are certain patterns of colors that seem to work really well together on emulation and on the TV, to where you don't get a lot of flicker or a lot of funny blending problems and things like that. So that's something. Now this game, when it's approached, you know, with the intention of finishing it with that level of seriousness, will have the mini text kernel now. So there's going to be talking. She's going to be interacting with people. And I really needed that. That was something I needed to figure out how to use, because I knew I wanted that from the very beginning. I want a dramatic, interactive backdrop here where you go up to someone and they say something to you, and maybe you can say something back, and it triggers events in the game. So now I've learned more, and so that's going to be slightly easier to do. I do have a lot of graphic ROM space left here, but same thing applies here. I always make way too much graphics for what the game can even handle. But again, 7800 versions of these games are not entirely out of the question. And when I reach that point where I'm like, okay, I'm just not getting what I want, I might go ahead and just shift gears and try to make a 7800 version of the game. I've actually done some 7800 stuff. I'll go ahead and show that real quick. Okay, now here's the first, like, Atari 7800 thing I ever did that was really functional. And of course it's Double Dragon. Now, I've learned a lot since then, and this is definitely not the direct approach that I would take now. I would change things. The characters would be slightly smaller. I would use 3 colors instead of 4. I would create a layering system for the sprites so that the sprites in the foreground can go in front of the sprites in the middle or background, just things like that. But this does scroll, and it has some animation. Now there's some flashing with the scrolling on this screen, and you can basically walk through the levels. I got a little cat up there. Now this is on the A7800 emulator, and as far as I know, this actually emulates the system correctly to where if it will work on here, then it will work on the real system. I might be wrong about that, but I do know that certain Atari 7800 emulators will play things that the system won't. So in this case though, this might actually work. Now the 7800 is harder to develop for. You either need a dev kit, which is fragile and expensive, or you need the newer uh, game cartridge. And the newer game cartridge will actually allow you to add your custom ROMs, and then it will use one of its front ends to load your game. And that's cool because there's a security code to access the Maria graphics chip. So when I first made this game, I went ahead and filled the screen with bad guys, but that's not how the Maria chip works. One thing the Maria chip never does, as far as I know, is flickers. Like the Nintendo flickers. If there's too many horizontal sprites, the Nintendo itself will flicker and shimmer. Try that bootleg, whatever, homebrew of Final Fight 3 that they made for the NES. The characters look great, but once there are 3 characters on the screen doing anything, once they cross paths, there's a huge amount of flickering. And it's like, it's slideshow flickering. It's not just shimmering or, you know, kind of like a little bit of an offset. It's some really hard flickering. But what the Maria chip does instead is it draws as much graphics as it can, and then once it runs out of RAM, it doesn't draw any more graphics. So when you put your graphics up there, you need to pay very close attention to exactly how much you're putting up on the screen. Now, what I did here was I created graphics that were very, very large and used a lot of color, and so by layering graphics and stuff and by creating different segments of the character, it pushed the system. So that character, he's, you know, dozens of sprites just creating that one character. And so where the system might be able to show, I don't know, 30 or 40 or 50 sprites in a row, depending on how many colors or how big they are, he's taking up too many to show him and more than one enemy in his horizontal path. Now what would happen though is they wouldn't shimmer or flicker. It would either only draw some of the enemy, or it would draw the enemy and then the next enemy would only have small portions of it drawn. So you really have to tweak and adjust everything. Now using these full-size scrolling play fields that I've done here also really takes a bite out of the system. So I can't have that diverse of a background. I might make the ground a solid color. I don't know. There's ways around it. You know, what I'm likely going to do though is make different games. I wanted to make a Double Dragon that's actually worthy of the 7800. I like the original 7800 Double Dragon, but it is a crap game. It's, you know, super, super hard, and it's very limited in its move set and everything. But I had fun with it when I owned it. Me and my brother beat it at least once, and but it's too hard. It's just too hard of a video game, and it's, you know, with the wedgie pinching exercise device that is the 7800 Pro line joystick, it was not a good experience. You know, today you can get thumb pad controllers and play it. That makes it slightly easier. You can figure out how to get through it, but nothing's going to change the fact that it looks like a kind of a sloppy Atari computer game or something. It just doesn't look as good as it could have, and it doesn't play as good as it could have, in my opinion. But all of these games I'm working on, some kind of form of them could be easily put over onto the 7800. And because they're very simple, and if they're working on the 2600, they're not going to push the Maria chip too much. And I could probably have no flicker and have really nice backgrounds. I'd be reaching a smaller audience. Creating the cartridges would be more costly, but I do have a massive bag of old 7800 PCBs, and they have the chips on them. If I can somehow flash EPROM to go on one of those chips, then I may be able to manufacture 7800 cartridges. But before any of that can be done, with any kind of certainty, I would have to either have the multi-cart or a dev kit. I'd much rather have the multi-cart because I can easily flash my work to it and just try it on the real. I have a 7800. I can try it on real hardware at any time. So yes, I have programmed things for the Atari 7800. Okay, this is my last one I'm going to show today, even though I probably have a dozen more functional demos. Mexican Standoff. So, Mexican Standoff. This is my mech shooting kind of a... It's meant to be an homage to Space Harrier and Afterburner and games like that, the pseudo-scalers. But it's also meant to have a Macross feel to it. So. So yeah, there's that. Transforming warplane. I like the robot mode. I think it's cool. I mean, he can go, he's hovering. Now he has the lowest speed, of course. He can also stop, whereas the other two modes can't stop. And he can go down to the ground, and when he's down to the ground, he can start running and stop. And the clouds are actually random generated. I thought that would be cool. So another one that's slated. So yeah, any comments? I'm very grateful for people that watch my videos. Sorry I don't have more to show for the wrestling game. That's definitely on the list. I want to get it done in a month or so, and I am working on it. But I do have some other things I want to work on too. The wrestling game, I'll probably shrink the wrestlers slightly and see if I can push a little more graphics into the ROM. I'd like, based on this really cool guy who liked my stuff, his suggestions were to add some items and stuff to make the characters. Now, I do like the idea of changing around the characters a little more, maybe to modernize or to, be more recognizable. Change the ring colors to represent different factions or organizations or events. But I am really very much pushing the system, and I need to figure out how to free up just a little bit more space to try, if I'm going to try to put any items in there. And there are items I want. Ideally, what I wanted to do was have the belt as the title screen, and that just ate up a huge amount of ROM space. I also wanted to have a smaller belt that they can wear, and I think that's in there, but it isn't like attached yet. So the graphics for the belt, a whole bunch of moves are already in there. I just need to type the code to tell them what to do, where to do it, and everything. So yeah, it's coming along. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for watching. Comments, like, subscribe, share. Buy Yeet Fighter, and if you want Yeet Fighter, I'll sell it to you. So I'll go ahead and put my email address up here, and you can contact me at that email address, and I will sell you the bin file of Yeet Fighter. Right now the price is $10. I dropped it a little bit, and I think it's still for sale for the online capable modern Atari VCS system, and I think it's in between $5 and $10, something like that. Pretty sure it's still for sale. I hope so. And thanks for watching.